Hi folks, welcome back. Sorry I have very little voice today. I've been sick the last few days and trying to get on with things, and it's actually really warm as well, so I'm just suffering a little. But alongside that van project, I've got another project that has to be finished at exactly the same time. Came up very suddenly, so I'm going to take you through it. I think it'll be quite interesting because I'm going through everything I'm going to have to do, everything that's involved. So let's go take a look. So that is sitting there, just taking it a bit easy on myself for today, so I'm not actually doing anything with that. I painted the wheels yesterday, which was a bonus because I didn't think I was going to be able to do anything. But yeah, the other thing we've got going on is this. So there is a 2.1 water boxer. You may see the issue. Yeah, I was going out the road the other evening and it had oil, everything was fine. We'd actually, it'd been here the day before and we just tightened up the exhaust and a few things. And then he was just cruising out the road and spat two conrods through the block. So, needless to say, that is effed. So the path we're taking is full TDI conversion. I have an engine here. I have a TDI ALH that I bought earlier in the year or late last year. Just bought it for myself. But yeah, so I've just been collecting some of the parts. I'll give you a comprehensive list of what's required to go from petrol to diesel. This is a fuel injected engine, so there's an ECU and a whole pile of wiring and crap in the engine bay that has to come out. We need none of it. Got a couple of mounts, left and right mounts, got a diesel bell housing there. Just got the engine over here. So I've just got this up on the bench. I kind of just needed to pull some of the wiring loom away. I've got everything with this engine. I've got the dash clocks, the ignition barrel, ECU, the whole wiring loom. I've got everything, so getting it to run shouldn't be too much of an issue. Don't know a whole pile about it, but either way, we're going to go ahead with the conversion. Like I said, the engine's probably the most disposable part of the conversion once you've spent the money to do it. I mean, you know, the engine's a few £100. Every component needed is also a few £100. So I just took the clutch off there. There was a solid mass flywheel. I've ordered a solid mass flywheel. It's been recommended to me that I should use a dual mass because we are using the petrol box. Now that box on that van is kind of the longest geared one of the whole lot, so it should be okay gearing wise, but this could be quite hard on it. I've made them aware of that, but for now we're going to run with what we've got. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff coming. I will go through changing the input shaft on the gearbox, changing the bell housing. We've got to obviously change the sump and oil pump on this, change the flywheel and clutch. I have to change the starter motor, and then we'll have to wire all this rubbish up and make it work. So yeah, well, we'll go through that as bits arrive. That's the next thing. I'll do a full comprehensive list of what's required here. Okay, so I did a few little bits, just getting the timing cover stripped off, getting the rest of the loom pulled away from the engine, and a few little things like that. Now, I've just been sorting out the engine bars this morning, which is fine. Got them cleaned up, taken out of the scrap van. That one's fine. This one had all been cut there, rotated and welded on to another plate that was over here. So I had to cut all that back and re-weld it the way it was supposed to be. So that's fitting in the van again now. I think that was all done for a Nissan conversion or something. I just mocked up the bell housing against the flywheel yesterday and stuff. That's fine. I've got a new TDI backplate and stuff coming for that. I also got the TDI input shaft. I'll show you that later. But one of the more disappointing things about this is that the mounts aren't going to work, so I'm going to have to completely fabricate mounts. So the back one, the holes are there. Now this is an ALH block, so this is a new generation of blocks compared to the AHU or the 1Zs. So that would, it's the other way up, that would fit, but clearly turbo's in the way, and you can't really do much with these because it's a VNT turbo and it's the exhaust housing is part of the manifold. So I was gonna try and clock this side of it, but I don't think it's even worthwhile. I think I'm just gonna fabricate a mount for there, same as I did on my own van. And the front mount, the holes actually aren't there at all. So there's these two, and then there's one way up here, so I can put a mount there. But if you look at, say, this is a 1.6 TD, this one, there you have the 3 mounting brackets that took the front mount, but as you can see, this is much closer to these two, and I have a feeling the other one's actually mounted more over here altogether. So I'll have to move the mounts on the engine bars. I think you have to do that with TDIs anyway, but yeah, that's a bit of a pain because that's quite a bit of work messing around with that. The other thing is this is a powered steering van I'm putting it into, so I'm going to have to see whether I can retain this bracket with the sump or not. I don't think I can. It'd be nice if I could. I could probably run the TDI power steering pump that's on this instead of the one that's in the van, but that's unlikely to clear the sump. I'll probably actually have to cut that away because the injector pump and everything is all mounted over the top of that. So we're just taking a look at the gearbox here. I took it out the other day, figured it'd be easier to do all this with it out. So I've just taken off the bell housing. That's the Petrol one right there. It's upside down looking at it. So it's just a row of 13s around the edge. I didn't bother draining the oil out first. I just cracked it open and let it drip away there. And the reason for this is to change to a diesel input shaft. So I'm going to a TDI input shaft. So this is 28 splines on this for the TDI clutch. They have to be changed even to go to a diesel, but as far as I'm aware, it's just this nose here needs is the problem. So you probably could get away with having the nose of the input shaft machined off, and I think that would do the trick, because as far as I'm aware, some of the clutches are shared between like the 2.1s and the diesels anyway, I think. To remove that input shaft, it's just a case take out the bell housing, remove this circlip, and this sleeve is slid over it. So once that circlip's out, this sleeve can be slid back this way, and this thing unthreads. You just twist it and it'll unthread from the inside the gearbox. So then it'd be a case of putting this one onto this shaft, threading this one on, and then sliding it back and putting in the new circlip. I am waiting for a new seal to come for in here on the diesel bell housing, and I also need to clean up the insides of this because this is an old bell housing, so I've got to get all that cleaned up so I'm not putting all that junk into the gearbox. And then I'm going to fit the new seal in here, and I think that sleeve as well goes in. So that's the next job. So I'm just getting the front of this bell housing cleaned up. Got the bushing out the other gearbox that has to be pushed in from the other side into here, and I'm going to put in a new oil seal in that. So that's next, and then we'll be sticking that bell housing back on the front of this box. Okay, before I go running off with this, I'm finally getting at this today now, and just hopefully getting it all hooked up to that gearbox and everything. So just changing the flywheel. This is solid flywheel. It actually had a solid flywheel on it. I didn't realise that the Golf TDI flywheels are in fact do match up to the T25 box and starter motor. Now there's a little bit of grinding to do inside the bell housing just to clear this, but the other thing I'm doing is putting on the back plate. Got that one from Brickworks, stainless back plate, covers over the starter motor hole that was here. And then I have the sump adapter kit from turbo sump there, and I have the sump adapter kit from Ultimate Engineering, which as well also has the oil pickup adapter. I believe this needs an O-ring. I paid a bit extra for a pickup tube. You need a pickup tube from a longitudinal engine. I paid extra for guaranteed delivery yesterday, no sign of it. So flywheel on, and then hopefully I'll get it hanging off the crane and get the sump off. The wiring is now, well, it's all here. It's all talking to the laptop. Immobilizer seems to be off. I know everything I need, so I've just kind of taped together a few of the ones that I know, whether it's positive or ground, and everything else I'll trim a lot of that back. The gauge cluster is lighting, just the clock and the mileage lighting up, and as far as I'm aware that's all I need. So, and I don't seem to have an immobilizer code anymore, so hopefully we're on track with that. Anyway, I'll get on with this, and I'm going to do time belt as well, but I won't bother showing that. Okay, so that's flywheel done. These ones, I think it says 44 pounds plus a quarter turn for torque on those, but check your own for sure. Now, important bit, new pilot bearing. So put that now in the center of the flywheel. Right, so on to the next step. Word of advice is just, while the flywheel's off, take off the two sump bolts that are up behind it. They can be got with it on, but it's really awkward. Now, next is changing the pickup pipe. Now I've bought an Ultimate Engineering sump adapter because the ALH will not accept a T25 sump. And I'll just hold it up next to the other one so you can have a look. So that is the ALH sump, and this is the T25 sump. So that's what the adapter's for. But that kit also includes this adapter. So just that adapter on the end, and I bought a new pickup tube. So you need a pickup tube off a longitudinal engine, and that will direct that back in the right direction for the T25 sump. I've also picked up just some multi-purpose tubing to go from the turbo drain back to this sump, and sorry now, I should do things one-handedly. A fitting for the turbo oil return there, so this will fit on there, and what I'll do is take the nut off of the old return and just slide the pipe over that, and hose clamp it, and that will be fine. There's no pressure in a return. It's just make sure it doesn't come off. So I'm going to proceed with that, getting those on. That's the next job. just a quick look at that now with the oil pickup in and the first half of that plate bolted up. I'm just going to give that a squeeze in a minute once the silicone stuff has set a little bit, and then there's that half there to go on next, and the sump bolts up through that as well. At first I thought that was an expensive bit of kit, that adapter, but there's quite a bit of engineering in it really. So I mean, yeah, it costs more than what a TDI engine probably would have cost, but if it opens up, you know, more possibilities in how new an engine you can go for and stuff, then I guess it just has to be factored in. It's a bit of a catch-22 anyway, because if you want to go with an upright engine, then you're going to need an adapter plate onto a Passat box, or because the T25 is going to bell housing is going to lay the engine over regardless. So yeah, if you want to go this route, you don't really have any other option. The reason I went for the adapter over looking for another engine is time, and this engine is here. We don't want to go in an upright configuration with it. Yeah, it's just what I've got, and it was the fastest way out was just to buy that and be done. So it's interesting anyway. Right, there's the sump on. I'm sweating now. It's warm in here today. It's raining all morning, but it's been really hot weather, so it's muggy as hell. There's the oil return. So if you look at the angle, it'll definitely put it above the oil level, the turbo that is. Now, you can't really clock these like I did on the AHU, basically because this manifold is, the exhaust side of the turbo is the manifold. Now you could move that, no you can't really do anything with it. So, but as for a feed angle, I mean, it's not vertical, but it's not bad. I don't think there'll be any issue with it. I know loads of people have ran them for years like that, and they've been just fine. Yeah, so you've seen the mount. So got my air intake on there, or my intercooler feed, and the other one's going to have to go up through there, through the mount. So I think I'll get it down now and bolt it to the gearbox. Okay folks, so jump forward a little here. Now nothing unusual about any of this, so that's why I didn't make more video on it. Really, I dragged the gearbox under there. I had forgotten to clearance the flywheel, so I put the old flywheel clutch assembly together and stuck it on the output shaft, spun it where it saw where it was touching, and just ground out a little bit. I'd say it's only very little anyway. The main part that I had to do here was get the engine bars fitted in, get the mount on the other side set up, and then make this mount here. So I made the same one for ours. Quite simple, reasonably heavy gauge, 2x1 box. Cut an angle, there's a heavy tab welded on the end of there, and then 2 bits of angular on each side, bolt them in place, weld them on, and just sits down on top of there. So it's a bit awkward to get that nut on that and stuff, but that'll be fine. So that was the main thing I wanted to get done yesterday, was these mountings done, so that the engine was at least sitting where it's supposed to be this morning. I'll give you one look at the other one. So that's my fabricated mount on the underside. I had it welded up as far as here, and then I had to put a plate on here once I knew where this mount was going to sit. I would actually like the engine to be a little lower. It's a bit too close to the hatch at the moment, so just this side, but I might drop that here on this. Just have to re-drill that bracket. So there's my mount around the turbo and stuff. The exhaust is going to need attention very soon. Now, one thing I will have to do is I'm going to take all these out afterwards, buy a selection of bolts that I need for everything, change the bolts, kind of want to paint that mount and change the bolts kind of after. I've rebolted the CVs, put all new bolts in those because they were all rounded out on this van. Hooked up the starter to the original wiring. I've just mounted the solenoids on off the bulkhead of the Golf on there. They all reach fine, and connected up the vacuum pipe for the brake servo. What else needs doing? I'm going to try maybe and mount this filter over here, the diesel filter. One issue I'm expecting is the power steering pump. I'd say that will foul that bar, which is a bit of a pain. I wish it didn't have powered steering, but this van does. So I'll have to work on that. But next goal is to hook up the loom and just see will it fire off. Okay guys, so I was blocked, almost gave up on this immobilizer ECU setup, just couldn't get it to stay running. So I seemed to have a signal from the key, the immobilizer light was going out, but that signal did not seem to be getting to the ECU, and I couldn't figure out how it was supposed to get there. So thankfully someone online saved me on that one and was actually able to tell me the routing for the immobilizer signal to there, and what it was the K line. I had spliced them all together, so there's one coming from here, well it's a W line, and this K line from here, and as far as I was aware, somewhere when I cut out the splices I thought they all went together, but then that gave me no reading on the OBD2 port, so I ended up running that directly to the ECU so I could talk with the ECU, but it was giving me a no start. But what it turns out is the K line from the OBD2 goes to the blue plug on here, to the K line port, and then the W line here carries that signal down to the ECU. So yeah, so it has to go through this, but whatever way I was tying them together, it was just wrong. So as soon as I did that, away it went. So I don't know how much detail I should go into in wiring here, because wiring's boring, complicated, and yeah, I know you need to know it to do it. But so I might give a look over some of the wiring when it comes to schematics, but I don't want to go too in depth into that. Either way, this thing just backed in here under its own power. I can't run it for very long because I've got no water in it and power steering is not hooked up and things like that. I have managed steering pump. This is a powered steering van, so I've managed to fit it there. It's very close to the... you can't even see that. So it's very close at the moment to this bar, even though I have cleared it. So what I'll probably do is take the pump back off and take a scallop out of this bar and weld in a section just to give it a bit of clearance. Because if I can retain that powered steering pump, it'll be a lot easier than mounting the original one. I've also probably got to take the sump off again, because that sump sealer I used is not, I don't know, it's for the job, but it's for a very fine fit, and I think it's still leaking. So yeah, a lot to do, a lot of plumbing to do, exhaust to do. Yeah, let's see how we get on. Right, I've been working away all day on it now, doing plumbing, tidying up the wiring and mounting all this stuff. So, airbox, it's going to sit in here. I'm going to get a long pipe to run to the intake. Original diesel filter I'm going to keep there. Header bottle mounted in the corner. I may raise that up a little. I've remounted the powered steering pipe or reservoir, and the T3 power steering banjo is the same. I just had to remove there's a sensor on it. I had to get rid of that just because it was fouling the pump there, and I had to change
the feed pipe to the pump and shorten the, not sure what that second small one is that comes back to the reservoir. Had to shorten that as well. The rest of the plumbing, that was a fitting I had bought for our van, but I had to make one because that was so long coming. So that's just the pipe down from the header tank into the lower radiator hose. The hoses, I used the section of the Golf hose onto that and into the T3 hose. I think this piece is part of an old, the upper one on the 1.6JXs that has all the legs off of it, but it was leaking. But the remainder of the hose actually suits that perfectly. So that just goes into a metal bend which runs back into to go to the top radiator hose. The heater matrix plumbing is the same, just various bits of pipe I had hooked up back there, and then the return line to the top of the header tank comes from down there as well, the original Golf one, straight back to the top of the header. So hopefully that'll be all okay. I'll check it out when I get it going. Just put all the feeds to the various looms back on that panel which came out of the Golf as well. That will most likely stay in the engine compartment, and the loom and all that stuff will go into a box, and I think I'm going to mount that in here because this has the a raised lid here anyway, so I'm going to mount that in there outside of the engine bay. I was thinking about mounting it in here, but if I can keep that original Golf air box, that'll save me some trouble, so I think I'm going to use the space for that instead. I was going to mount this here, but if it tucks in there out of the way, and it's in the cold air intake there as well inside from the louvers, so yeah, all coming together. Okay, so I'm just about to leave this alone now for the evening. So just having a look at the boost piping and stuff, but I think I might just go and buy some pipe work for that. So we'll just give it a little start. I've just hooked it to a thing on the switch that's a switch from the van. All along I've just been using a toggle switch in here, but the ignition is on inside now, so just see the dash when I switch it on, so everything lights up, immobilizer out. It'll beep away there a few times, and a few other warning lights will come back on that panel as it realizes it's missing things, but none of that matters. So next thing I need to do really is mount this pedal. My one didn't have that on the AHU, they have the kind of can-shaped one. So we'll take a look at this. This van's a left-hand drive. I think it fits well enough in the floor in these, but I'll have a look at it there on the right-hand drive just to see what it's like as well, because I think they're not quite as comfortable to use as the original one, and just that the hinging point is the top rather than the bottom. Yeah, so if this was to go in a right-hand drive, it's a bit awkward. I think it fits better in the left-hand drive one. You'd make it work, but just not as easily.
Now in a left-hand drive van, once that one's gone out the way, I have to make a little bracket to bring it out about 1/2 inch from the bulkhead, but they do actually fit in quite reasonably nice in there. Okay, so that's my lower bracket. I don't think I'll need an upper bracket. I think it'll just be this one to push the base of it out, and I'll bolt that through the bulkhead, and the top one will just bolt in directly. We'll see anyway. Okay, so this is intake pipe, boost pipe. It's going to go from the turbo straight to the manifold. I'm going to run without an intercooler for now. I did put the intercooler in my AHU van, but the position of it is, but it's up on top of the gearbox. It took quite a bit of pipe work. I still haven't built a shroud on that to direct some airflow into it, but at least it's in the line. But I think if I could get a nice kind of flat, normal, like a front mount intercooler, perhaps mount it somewhere a bit better on this van. So for now, yeah, I'm just going to run with a pipe straight from the turbo to the intake. The thing I've been working on, because I want to get some of this fabrication stuff out of the way, is this. So this is my exhaust. That's the silencer from the 2.1 Petrol. Not sure if that's an original 2.1 Petrol one. It seemed to have a welded on fitting on this end, but that's the flexi joint out of the TDI. So yeah, I just cut that to start with, mocked this up where I needed it to be, and then assemble it bit by bit until I had what I wanted. I hold on to all bits of exhaust and I get it wherever I can, all the bins and stuff like that, so I have different sizes. I've done this on my van, I've done this on the orange van, where put in a flexi joint just after the turbo or the manifold, and then I'm just going to hang this on normal rubber mounts. This one's going to hang from the engine bars, same as the orange van. On my one, I mounted it from the frame I built to support the engine. So yeah, it works quite nicely. Yeah, if you back the exhaust into something, it would probably come back against the flywheel. Not the flywheel, the pulley, but that would be a bit extreme. I've done 15,000 miles on mine, no problem. It's nice and quiet, it doesn't rattle, and it doesn't break. So that's the system we're going for. So I'll get a bit of VHT paint now in a little while and paint all that up as well before I put it on. Now I'm hoping to have this thing driving today, so exhaust painted and the intake painted and the accelerator pedal mounted. I still got to run a cable. I ended up welding in a stainless bracket behind that, so I can just bolt this on and off. Same at the top. Just holds it out a bit of an angle. It actually feels quite comfortable when you're sitting in the seat using it. So light comparing to the original. So I just removed the engine bar again, just to cut a notch and clearance there for the power steering pump. So that should give it enough clearance there to be alright. It was clearing it just about before, so it can only be an improvement. And that bar there is just for the exhaust mount to push onto. Just welded that in as well, so there's no weak points in this bar. Okay folks, we're closing in on it here now. Accelerator's in. That's actually quite comfortable there, even sit there with your foot on it. I'm pleased with it. It's all wired up and working. Bit of a pain having to run cables through these, but that's another thing done. Now, as for the engine bay, kind of getting things tidied away really. The dash panel is in that electrical box there. I'm going to change my air filter idea because that space is just too handy for that. I didn't have enough loom to go up to here. And putting it up there in front of that box was a bit awkward as well, so that'll probably live there. ECU will probably live there somewhere as well. Must find the cover for that fuse box. Power steering is all hooked up.
Got my thin clearance there for that, slightly the wrong angle, but still have enough room. Powered steering's blade. Need to have a look at the vacuum hoses for the boost control, and I'll just show you underneath where I did that pipe work. Right, so the main thing I've got left to do now is an intake pipe, because I need to feed that somewhere up to an air filter. Exhaust is all in and mounted, and that other boost pipe I had to shorten that because it gets quite close to the exhaust there, but need to paint up that mount and stuff as well. But exhaust has a bit of movement, and yeah, pretty much buttoned up. Right, so took it for a little drive over the road with just the gallon stuck on the back. Goes really nice. Got a little bit of stuff to button up, obviously. Empty all the petrol out. This was a fuel injected van, so it has quite big fuel lines. It has an inline pump and a filter, so I'll probably just get a length of hose and run it right to the tank, to the filter here. The return I'll use as is. But yeah, had quite a bit of petrol in it by the looks of it, so we get that out of there. So something I completely omitted was the boost pressure sensor. That goes in the top of the intercooler, but seeing as this is my intercooler bypass as such, I welded in a fitting in there, so I'll put it into that pipe now. So that just bolts in there now. Go refit that pipe now and see can I get rid of that code. Okay, so I'm just on my way to drop this van back. Done well in it now, 50k. Almost forgot to finish off the video, so it's all going fine. I wired up a relay on the brake switch to replace the brake switch this morning, but that was giving me trouble and giving me a dead pedal, so I've got something wrong there, but I've just disconnected it now and it drives fine without it. I also fitted the glow plug button because I couldn't get the ECU to run the glow plugs. What else? We'll take one last look over the engine, and then we'll have a chat about the different bits and pieces after that. Okay, so end result. Got that mounting all sorted the other evening. I had to weld a nut with a tube onto another nut there so I could tighten that one down. That actually increased the vibration of the engine at idle quite a bit, so maybe we'll look into replacing these mounts at some stage. My fuse board is inside there, panel inside there, ECU is there for now. I'm going to get him to bring it back to me in a week or two, and we'll waterproof all this a little better. It's also just got a mushroom air filter in there, so quite a bit of induction noise. I ran out the rocker cover breather just there to it's not onto the air intake, but I also didn't want it dripping oil down the back of the engine, but that little bend in that pipe seems to be enough to keep it dry. Now the three plugs for the boost solenoid, the EGR valve and the other one in the middle are all the same. It seemed to be a stretch to get one to go over there, so I had them the other way, but that was wrong. So as soon as I switched that round, that solved my overboost problem I had the other day. Oil pressure sender is just direct from the other van. For some reason it seems okay, and happy enough with one of the original van leads, even though normally you need both. But that's given me an oil light that goes out, etc. I hooked the level sensor back up on there. I don't have a proper plug for that. And the temperature sensor, I had this piece of pipe with a sensor mount in it, so I just went through the different ones on the petrol engine until I got the right one, and this is actually giving me a temperature reading. So, and I checked it up, just getting up towards the light, it's somewhere in the low 80s, so it's actually running quite cool for the most part. But yeah, that takes care of the coolant, temperature gauge, oil pressure gauge, and the battery light. I forget what the battery light went on to. Oh yeah, that just plumbed. That just went back into the original wiring as well, actually. So that's all fine. You could do without this T on an ALH because there is a feed there for the water, so they're actually a bit more straightforward even than the AHU when you get to that point. Right, folks, so having a bit of a day off today. That was yesterday I delivered that van. I just thought I'd finish this up by talking a little bit about the donor vehicle, what you need, and where I would go with it for my own, if I was doing it for myself. So in that van I kept the dash and so I had to figure out the immobilizer. Which is okay. That was done almost more of as a time crunch thing than anything else. The ECUs unlocked for those engines can be got for about €100 or something, less than €100 off eBay. So it's probably not justified to mess around with the dash and stuff. The ECUs for the AHU seem to be 300, 350 unlocked. So then they have the immobilizer module. So if you're dealing with an AHU that has the separate immobilizer module and not the dash clocks, then it's probably worth maintaining the immobilizer. But for the ALH at least, and probably the PD engines, it's probably the option it would be to go for an unlocked ECU. Now, this van I'm actually sitting in, I'm almost certainly going to be putting a PD engine in. This is my own, and it's kind of probably the route I want to take with it. So I will buy unlocked ECU for that. I thought if I was doing my own, I would probably do the engine upright. But in this particular van, I want to keep the engine below the hatch again. So I will buy that adapter kit and lay the engine over and build the mount, same as I did on the ALH. Again, this isn't going to have a Passat box or anything. I'll probably get the gearbox built in this van. But we'll talk about that later on because this one's a bit interesting. Now, if you are walking up to a donor vehicle, that ALH was sold to me by a breaker that I know who was good enough to remove all the loom, the clocks, the pedal, and everything for me, so I had everything I needed. But if I was to do it now again, I would walk up, snip the two cables coming out the dash panel. They're the ones going to the green and the blue plug. I would try and maintain the six, I think the six, maybe seven plugs where the loom comes in from the engine bay that have, they bring all the various things. I try and keep those plugs, but cut them off on the inside of the car and keep both sides of the plug. Then if you unwrap the loom somewhat, it breaks down into two sections. There's one section that will do the sensors on the bulkhead, the solenoids, and they do the coolant glow plugs, which I didn't use, on the side of the engine. And then the other harness goes to... Now, with that unlocked ECU, you could skip over the dash panel part of that process. So you could just take the two looms from the engine, obviously your ECU, your pedal, and what else do you need? The solenoids off the bulkhead, leave them connected if at all possible, and the OBD2 port. And that should pretty much have you sorted. You need the cluster, the dash cluster, if you want to keep the immobilizer. As for the wiring, yeah, it's complex, but it's not, what you end up with isn't that big a deal. You have power and earths going to the cluster. There's a power and earth obviously to each loom, each half of the loom. But once you've gone through all that and you've been looking at the schematics for long enough, it's not too bad. It's a lot of time, but it's not too bad. Then you end up needing just a few heavy gauge supplies, but only one switch wire from the van. So it's easy to find something that comes on with the ignition that will power up your ECU, which then in turn will power up your 109 solenoid and fire up the rest of the systems in the van. So actually the 109 relay is another thing you should grab. So that's about where we're at with that. Definitely the next approach will be a PD engine. They're just more available, and now I think after doing the ALH, it's definitely on the cards for me to do. I've also learned a bit to do with the wiring doing that, so I'm going to go back through the wiring on my AHU and see can I solve a few little niggly problems that have been annoying me for a while. And also I've had some better relays and fuse boards and stuff put aside for ages to install in that van. I did buy another ECU for it, thinking I have some problems with this one. That got sent away to have the immobilizer turned off and was never seen again, so I've had to give up on that. That's gone. They won't answer the phone to me anymore. And so yeah, I think a bit of wiring anyway on that van may rectify a few of those issues, and I might not need it, but we'll look at that as well perhaps. So I'm going to leave it at this. This video has been long enough. I'm sorry to have jammed it all into one video, but I thought if I put it up in a series, this first one gets watched and then tapers off, where if you want all the information that I have on this, it's in this one. So thank you very much for watching, anybody who's still at this point, and we'll see you at the next one. Cheers.